see your hand. Go ahead. Please announce your name, please.
Michael Fedor, resident of Hampton Township, Cumberland County. I'm attending today to express support for, I believe, a provision that will be before the board today and in the future relative to our agricultural conservation easement program. I believe that this program, in its 30-year history, has done a lot of good for our community. And I wanted to attend today to express my support for a proposal that would potentially increase our commitment to that program financially, not just for 2020, but make a firmer and more substantial commitment for the period ahead, the decade ahead. There's lots of details that I'm sure you'll discuss and consider, but it's an issue that's very close to my heart, and I hope that the Board of Commissioners will take the proposal very seriously and adopt it as part of this 2020 budget. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Thank you. So I'm also here to, I'm Jean Fauci.
For the record, please.
Thank you, sir. And I'm also here to express my interest in the Farmland Preservation funding. Our Commissioner's strategic directions, they clearly indicate that smart growth and the environment are their highest priorities. In fact, goal 1 of the 7-goal strategy is to conserve our natural resources via the preservation of productive agricultural lands and the support of our agricultural industry. Goal 2 of the plan is for future growth, and goal 5 is to promote healthy communities. I believe that a larger investment in farmland preservation on the county level is necessary as we work to accomplish these 3 of our 7 goals. Preserve farms increase state dollars coming into our communities. Our preserved farms are inspected for adherence to sustainability requirements, and they provide us with food and beauty and a connection to our state's agricultural tradition. Farms increase our property values, provide employment, and generate tax revenue. We need preserved, permanent anchor farms as part of our economic strategy. We certainly have local farmers interested in the program. We know the benefits of farmland preservation, and we have a demand outpacing our resources. After the last meeting, I reviewed Jim's funding proposal, and I don't have any issues with it, and I appreciate that there's an out clause written into that proposal. At that prior meeting, Vince also expressed that he has a funding proposal, and I would like to hear more on that also. Regardless, it seems to me that the time has come to enforce our goals with the dollars that will allow us to make a real impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move to
I have a question. Have you received any input from anyone other than office seekers? You have not. Okay.
Well, we have from the entire membership of the Agricultural Land Preservation Board, which is a volunteer board, which is a good job. But I'm just saying, and I did receive those from a couple of folks who, because of other engagements and medical issues, could not attend, and wanted to be here today. I'll just fix that.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. We have approval of finance meeting minutes of August 28th. Is there a motion?
So
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments on the minutes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Okay, on the topic for discussion today is funding request for 2020 for farmland preservation. We have Kirk and Stephanie. So, have at it.
Sure, Commissioners, when the annual exercise come in to discuss the farmland preservation budget and allocation for the upcoming years. So I know Stephanie and I provided you with a wealth of information. So I think today we're largely here to answer your questions and help you in your decision-making process. So Stephanie, what you do?
Yeah, I mean, there were 2 main spreadsheets that were provided that I could just hit the highlights on if you'd like before we delve in.
Yeah.
The first was the historical allocation that gives a breakdown of our funds from 2004 to the current year. And I would just highlight that this time around we did add some additional information that could provide a little bit more context, providing the number of preserved farms and the acres of preserved. Keeping in mind that every year is a little different, and certainly the size of the farm can impact the number of farms preserved. The location of the farm would impact the total overall cost and our ability to preserve, more or less acres. And then also down on the bottom right-hand corner, we also added some additional information that keys in on the general fund costs per acre for each individual farm, or I'm sorry, each individual year. As you know, a significant amount of the funding we get comes from the state. So, in terms of what our share is what we're here often, discussing. So attempted to break that out there. But again, just a cautionary note that those figures aren't necessarily linear in nature. There's so many things that can impact the number of acres preserved, which then, has an outcome on the cost per acre. And then the second chart is typical that we usually prepare to is all these different funding scenarios. So we looked at, 8 different scenarios, starting at the low end of $250,000 and going the whole way up to $1.7 million, and breaking out what we would anticipate in terms of state match and state grant, how many acres we could preserve given different various general fund funding levels. So happy to dig into any and all of these.
Well, I think
I have a question.
initially, I think it's important to, and we should probably put this in the record, a letter that was written on behalf of the Farmland Preservation Board. I think it, it talks a little bit in here about the substance of the proposal that was recommended. In 2020, the 1% of the county's general fund budget, we total approximately $875,000. That level of county investment would leverage state funds totaling approximately $2.1 million and would result in preservation of approximately 1,000 acres of prime farmland. I won't read the entire letter, but I will, kind of like submit it for the record and put that in there, because I think that's usually what happens here, is you present the request of the Agricultural Land Preservation Board, and I wanted to essentially receive the full consideration that I believe it deserves.
Can I ask who wrote the letter?
Not me.
Staff wrote the letter on behalf
Staff.
of the board.
Okay.
Was that the suggestion? That I wrote the letter?
There's no suggestion. I asked
Oh,
a
okay.
simple question. Who wrote the letter?
Okay, well, it was written on behalf of the board's action. So, look, here's the thing. This has been kicked around just about every year I've been a county commissioner here. And we have this debate over how much is enough. And usually it ends up, in most cases, the caboose on the budget train. And, this year, the previous year, and 2 years before that, the Agricultural Land Preservation Board had recommended $1 million contribution from the general fund for farmland preservation. And it was based on trying to get close to the goal that the Farmland Preservation Board established back in 2016 as to trying to reach over the next number of years the preservation of 50% of our remaining prime farmland in Cumberland County. So last year, the $1 million request was rejected for the third consecutive year. And I thought that, well, can we come up with maybe a different idea? Can we somehow maybe, provide for some kind of consistent policy? So I had suggested this to the Agricultural Land Preservation Board, which they, unanimously, embraced. I just think that is the fastest growing county in the state of Pennsylvania. And while we've made progress in the past, in fact, I wonder if Governor Casey were still alive today, whether he would have realized that across the state of Pennsylvania, nearly 600,000 acres has been preserved as a result of the landmark law that was passed in the Commonwealth 30 years ago. And we've made an accomplishment. We took advantage of that. Commissioners Blair Husted, Bob Moore, and Marshall Myers. implemented the state law and our Farmland Preservation Program here in Cumberland County. And as a result of that, and then the actions of the boards of commissioners that followed them, it have reached the point where we have preserved 20,000 acres of prime farmland in perpetuity, which I think is a significant accomplishment. I just believe that we can do better. You know, as our county grows and we continue to see, you know, a lot more warehouses, et cetera, you know, this is the tool that we have at the county that actually can help to save some of that rich farmland before it's, you know, paved over, in my opinion. Of course, we all know that the local municipal officials have the final land use and zoning decisions. But I am impressed, have been impressed by our program, the folks who work for our program, staff at the county level, the dedicated volunteers who take an inordinate amount of time in making sure that when we make those decisions as to what acres are going to be preserved, they are some of the best farm acres that we have left, you know, in Cumberland County. So, again, I think we can do better. We know that the citizens, through the sample, 3,000 citizens provided input to our comprehensive plan. 91% responded that farmland preservation was important to them. 81% said that they support an increase in county funding above the current level for farmland preservation. So this is one way we can get there. We can get there, hopefully, you know, what I believe is a very reasonable, fiscally responsible, as well as a non-complicated and easy to understand way to bolster, you know, essentially to meet this priority of our county. So I just hope that my colleagues, you know, give this a serious consideration. I hope I believe it deserves, and I'd certainly be willing to consider other alternatives too. But we don't have to make this too hard, okay? You know, we know for every acre that we preserve, we get a return on that investment. You know, and it's real. It's not abstract. It's not imaginary. It's not mythical. First off, for every dollar the county commits, we draw down more than $2 from the state for the program. And then for every acre we preserve, you know, essentially we get a significant benefit. Help to guarantee continuation of local food production, protect our natural environment, including the critically important water supplies, groundwater supplies, and we safeguard, you know, an economic benefit that's estimated per acre at over $14,000. Over $14,000 in economic benefit per acre. So I'm just asking that we try to come up with a you know, resolution to this to provide some additional funding in the 2020 program year, near 1% of the county budget. You know, and I'll just say that, and then I'll open it up to my colleagues here, but I'll just say that, you know, in terms of reality, in terms of looking at this, you know, from where we stand today, in May of this year, we paid off a bond issue that had been taken out, I believe, in 2006. And we have been paying for the past dozen years or more an average $427,830 to pay off that bond issue. So one of the other options we might consider is, without increasing any additional financial burden on the county taxpayers, is we could provide the same level of funding, like 1% is no good, $500,000, and then we could also tack on to that the $427,830 that we've been spending over the past dozen years for farmland preservation. So that's another option. That's an alternative. That would give us to preserving, instead of 1,000 in 2020, we could preserve 1,100 acres in 2020, without spending one more dime than what we're spending now. So I hope we can do better.
Okay. Sandy, you checked some different counties, and I think, well, we don't know any county in Pennsylvania has a specific formula to come up with what they allocate each year. It's pretty much a flat number. Lancaster County is put in a flat amount, Chester County, and so forth. So nobody uses a percent of this or a percent of that. I'm not saying that it's good or bad, but my concern is a percent of revenue is too open-ended. So if I may, I have a few more questions as well and some comments. Our county, as it's been pointed out, has preserved 20,000 acres of prime farmland, which represents, depending on what number you compare it to, 13% of our prime farmland, and 12% of our, I mean, it's in agriculture, is that a correct statement, Stephanie? But most of our ag land is prime, based on those numbers, it's 13,000 difference. During the last 4 years, Cumberland County has preserved an additional 36 farms. That equates to 3,768 acres. This is the highest consecutive 4-year total since the growing breeder monies were awarded back in 2004. This is an average over the last 4 years of about 950 acres per year. The previous 4 years, the numbers were considerably less. Now, Stephanie, one of the charts you gave us showed, among other things, I'll call the top counties in the state, what their percent of preserved land is. And if you throw out the high and the low, it works out to about 20%. Okay, we're at about 12%. My suggestion would be, actually I have a couple of suggestions, and Dana, I'll need your help on some of this as well. I would suggest as a goal, let's have a goal in mind, like, let's get our percentage, say, up to 20%, from 12 to 20. How can we do that? We could do so over a 10-year period, and that would equate to about 1,000 acres per year, which isn't too far off of what we've done in the last 4 years. We could estimate the amount of general fund monies that we needed in that 10-year span, but keep in mind, there are variables that come up, what the state allocation is going to be, what our good friends in Silver Spring Township, who have a land preservation program as well that has helped us immensely. We could come up with a program based on a percentage and a number of acres that would equate to about 30,000 acres. So we'd be 10,000 off of that, and our goal could be to reach that mark by the year 2030. Another idea I had, actually it's not my idea, it's an idea that our director or chief financial officer proposed, and I like this one as well. Look at our property tax base. This would be the assessed value, correct?
Correct,
Okay, which is about $25 billion.
yes.
Okay. We could look at that tax base and take a piece of our property tax millage and use that amount, which, by the way, I think it would go up each year because our assessed values of our property have been going up since the beginning of time.
Percentage would go up.
Percentage would go up.
The take would go up.
The take would go up, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the amount would go up. So we would have a straight millage be multiplied by a number that's gradually increasing, is how I see it. Okay. So that would create a clear dollar amount that would likely go up each year, and it would be matching or in correlation to our tax base versus just picking a number and taking a percent of budget revenue. Other things I want to mention, whether it would be of any value or not, but are we at the correct price point for what we're paying per acre? And what I mean by that, and Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, our easement value the maximum cap is 4,000. Our average is what, around 3,500?
They're around 3,200
Yeah.
last year.
What would happen if we lowered that max to 3,500? Would it be a negative, would it be a positive? I know not many years ago, maybe 10 years ago, we were looking at actually increasing it because of the land boom back in 2005, 2006. Glad we didn't do that. But are we still good at that number? Should it be lowered? Should it be
I mean,
modified a bit?
that's something that the Ag Board has definitely struggled with every
Yeah,
year, is
and I
what's
get
the
it.
right price point? Because they didn't want to lower the cap so much or lower
Right.
values so much that, good farmers no longer wanted to participate because they felt they were, getting less than they deserved for their easements.
And I'm not saying to do that, it's just something that we looked at. One thing too this year, I noticed we had 6 farm owners that agreed to a 50% easement value. So that tells me something. So, again, my point is, Jim, your suggestion is simple, clear to understand, but I think, in all fairness, it's a little too open-ended. And what we could tie this to really is the property taxes and the certain millage piece of that. And that one too, we could determine that and how much we could put that to be to get us where we need to be in 10 years, 15 years, et cetera. So that would be, in my opinion, a better way to go. I have other questions, but I don't want to hog up the time, so I don't know. Gary, do you have any comments or anybody?
Do we get copies of all the things you suggested? I noticed some of this, I haven't had time to really digest.
Yeah, I think
I'll put it this way, I think, especially since there's a goal enunciated, some guidance on, is a good approach, and the things you've mentioned, Vince, are very outcomes oriented, so I like those. I am profoundly opposed to carve-outs because there's a lot of negatives that come with that. For one, all the other things you have to fund are placed in automatic disadvantage. So I think the idea of guidance as opposed to some type of binding, simple but perhaps overly simple solution is far better. I'm more looking at these things. I think we need to develop a few more, and I will certainly have some questions for Dana on what the ongoing impact, downstream impacts are going to be as well. So.
Yeah, what I would ask staff to do, in addition to Jim's option, that's still on the table, but the options that I had mentioned, can we put together what it would cost? Or I think we know what it would cost, but how would we do it based on millage? Could we do it, also look at the option of just setting that goal of 20% or whatever, over 10 years or whatever time period we want to use? What could we at least estimate we would need out of general fund? And I know that's not an exact number due to all variables that could come up, but I think it would give us a good idea to at least look at that as an option. So those were my 2 suggestions. I probably have a couple more, but I would ask that we entertain not only Jim's option, but 2 I've suggested, and if there's anyone else on staff that has any other suggestions. I think it's clear that, and remember in the many years I was on the Ag Board, when I was in those people's shoes, asking this board for money, it was not the easiest time. And sometimes it was, went through well, sometimes it didn't. But I understand both sides of the equation here. Now, as long as I'm sitting here, I will support farmland preservation. And that's just simply my point of view here. think there's other options we could look at to really target what we need to do. And do it in a more, tying it more to something like property tax.
Yeah, I would just caution, I think, you know, I think we should seriously consider the KISS principle, you know? You know, because the more complicated it gets, the more difficult it is for, you know, our constituents to understand. And so, I think this proposal makes a lot of sense. In terms of the issue of carve-outs, we already have a carve-out. We already have a carve-out. We have a couple of budgetary carve-outs. One of them has to do with, you know, how much of a fund balance we maintain, how much money we keep in the bank. The other one has to do with, you know, what kind of a salary increase our employees get. We have a carve-out. So I would just like to suggest that, and I'm certainly willing to consider, you know, other proposals, but at the end of the day, it comes down to this. The more money we can put into this, the more we get back from the state, and the more acres we can preserve. And again, this is not some abstract thing. You know, a lot of times in government spending, there's a lot of variables as to, you know, what the outcome, what the result is. We know what the result is here. And we preserved 20,000 acres in perpetuity, and that's a significant accomplishment. But if we look around us, and just in comparison, I mean, that's, like Vince said, 12 or 13% of the remaining farm acres that we have here in Cumberland County that are waiting to be preserved. We always have, you know, more applicants and farmers who are interested in preserving their farms than there is available funding. And, you know, if we look around the state, I mean, the fact of the matter is, we're like behind York County, our southern neighbor, we're behind Lancaster and Berks big time. Of course, they're the two leaders in the state of Pennsylvania. We're even behind Adams County. But, you know, they've preserved more acres than we have. So at the end of the day, I just think that we can do better, and I'm hoping that we can reach, you know, an agreement. You know, again, I'll point it out again, because I think it needs to be underscored. For the past 12 years, all right, we've spent about $427,000 on average to retire a debt service payment for Farmland Preservation bond issue that was taken out in 2006. That debt was retired in May of this year. All right. So you could take the $427,000 and you could add it to our $500,000, and without costing the taxpayers of Cumberland County any more than they paid the past 12 years. But we could preserve in perpetuity an additional 1,100 acres of farmland next year. The proposal, the 1%, is less than that, provides for an increase. And there would be an increase, 1%, if the county's budget continues to grow as the county continues to grow. To me, it just makes a lot of sense, and I hope that it can be considered at the end of the day.
Just a comment I want to add to our county the last 2, maybe 3 years has gone from 9th to 7th. So we are moving on. Does staff have any comments? Diana?
I think it's a question about, you know, how much money we need from the general fund. If you look at some of the projections we provided, I think you're looking at around $1 million right here. I mean, so if we're looking at 10,000 acres over 10 years, roughly looking at $1 million here. So I think it's up to the mechanism to get there. Is it Joe's proposal, it's yours? Either way, I think that the bottom line is, if we want to hit a goal like that, it's $1 million free. Just figuring out what tools acceptable to do that.
I think that one thing that has not been put on the table here, unless I missed what's great, but to reiterate a point, we really need to bring some municipal partners. Silver Spring has done a very good job on that front. And candidly, some of these municipalities have a lot at stake here. It's in their self-interest. I don't think they've been encouraged strongly enough to participate, so we can certainly fill some of that gap. North Middleton, South Middleton in particular are, I think, prime areas that would, and there's others that would be prime candidates for that. And they just haven't been asked the right way.
Yeah, in fact, thanks for bringing it up. September the 10th, county and Cumberland Conservation Collaborative, I can never get that right, is having a joint forum. And the main topic is land preservation. And there's going to be a gentleman there from Chester County to talk about land preservation. And I know Chester County and a lot of those eastern counties have a lot of township land preservation programs, which is critical to their success. Cumberland here, we only have one, Silver Spring. Now, at this forum on September the 10th, there will be a number of township supervisors and township managers from some of these key townships that could potentially do the same thing that Silver Spring has done. And I've been asked to speak on that topic, and I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully we can get some interested people in other municipalities. Kirk, I know that South Middleton tried to do this about 14 years ago, and I know Silver Spring learned a lot from what happened, and that's one reason why it was successful. I think possibly if South Middleton tried it again, it would be successful. But I know I'm getting off topic here, but
Yeah, the only thing, Vince, if I could,
Yeah.
just add is you mentioned, you pointed out, especially like I think with the 2019 program, that we've been able to preserve more acres.
sorry.
Part of the reason for that was because the Agricultural Land Preservation Board members decided to essentially go out of order and pick some farms that are still prime farmland, okay, and offer the 50% discount. So there's no question, and that's how you can lower our average cost per acre too. If we have more farm owners who are willing to, they don't quite to make the cut every year, but it's still prime farmland. And if they're willing to take what we call the bargain sale price or whatever, we can preserve more acres. I also wanted to say that, what occurred in Silver Spring Township, is something that the citizens of, especially the municipalities in the western part of the county, should take into consideration and work with their local elected municipal officials. The option is this: nobody likes to talk about taxes, but the option is to place onto the ballot a question: do you favor, an increase in the earned income tax, or the law provides, do you favor? I'm sorry, I'm laughing about that. Do you favor an increase in the property tax? And it would be up to the voters as to whether or not they want to see a property tax, or they want to see an earned income tax, to actually provide the funding for this. The residents of Silver Spring Township said we're willing to pay more so that we can preserve. And that, I tell you what, that program has been a tremendous benefit in terms of supplementing and helping us to, by working in partnership with the county program, to draw down, additional funding from the state. So it has definitely benefited Silver Spring Township. So that's an issue that I think, we could do much better than 50% over the next 20 years of preserving remaining farmland. If others want to step up, if we want to do that, and not only that, but we could maybe reach that goal a lot faster. Again, if there was, we'll see how this pilot program worked out in terms of the bargain sale, but there has been an adjustment. That's brand new, right? That's brand new.
Yeah, we changed the criteria for doing bargain sales in our, when we recertified last year, so.
Okay, just to tag off of the Silver Spring program, the last 3 years, they have co-broke with us, for lack of a better term. And that provided monies that we also got state grants off of and matches to the tune of over $282,000. I think if we had 3 or 4 more municipalities, we could do that. But the amount of acreage we could preserve, and we're not going to give up on that. But I would ask Stephanie, you and or Kirk and Dana to jump into these options that are out here and keeping Jim's on the books as well. And maybe we can reconvene in another finance meeting this month and take it from there.
So Vince, just to
Yeah.
make sure we're clear that we're looking at the goal of 20% of our ag land.
I just mentioned that as a possibility, yes. If you want to make 20% of prime,
Yeah, that was my question. Are we talking about prime land that's already targeted for acquisition or?
there's not a big difference in acreage, like 13,000.
Oh, yeah, and our program said ag prime, the future land use map, so it's an area that we designate in our comp plan.
I guess you could use that.
So 20% of the ag prime land as designated on our county comprehensive plan by 2030. Is that correct?
Yeah, so right now it's 13%. 20 is about the averages now, all those other counties that would put us on par with them. You can do various percentages, various time periods, but I thought 20 and 10 seemed reasonable.
So, forgive me for asking, interrupting. So given the 10-year time frame, at current rate, what percentage will that get us to?
I'm working at it backwards.
I guess if we're looking at
Unless
round
Dana has it in her file of numbers.
So, what was your question again? It was,
Yeah, if we continue doing it at the rate we're doing, how close does that get us?
if we do 565 a year for over 15 years, we would have 10,000 acres. So that would get us very close, over 15 years instead of 10.
But see, the last 4 years, we averaged 900 and some. So your numbers might be a little,
Well, these numbers are based on the presentation that Stephanie and Kirk put together in January based on those numbers. And I believe they sold some of the farmland at discounted rates this year.
Oh, yeah, that's
Which
why
then-
the
That's not-
1255 is
That's
a big jump, so
Right.
that's
right.
not representative.
Maybe you guys get together and come up with something that's attainable, but reasonable. When I mean
Okay.
reasonable, not, I know there's a lot of factors involved, but at least give us
So that's the gold piece. So we have the gold piece then of this 20% of prime ag land shown on a future land use map by 2030. And the financial mechanism at this, and we're looking at that assessed value type equation.
yes, what millage would be required to attain that? This is not complicated. We have a number, assessed property value multiplied by a piece of her tax millage. It's, I think, very similar to library tax.
So
Well, but okay, how is that different from a carve-out, what I'm suggesting?
Because it's based on some property values, your approach is all revenue.
Yeah, in this way, at least, it's still pegged somewhat to financial condition, which is, to the extent that we have any carve-outs at all, they are all pegged to financial condition. Whereas if you just said percent, you realize no regard to
As I said, I'll take a look.
Okay,
I don't know
we should-
where
we should-
20% of what, I don't know what we were talking about.
Prime ag.
prime ag is 153 acres,
Correct.
that's remaining, right?
Yeah. Prime ag is 153.
153,000 acres on the east side remaining.
Ag, or land in agricultural use is 166. So it's close.
Yeah.
Options are always good.
Does anybody have any other comments, questions? Yes, John, go ahead.
Hello, John Brunner, Silver Spring Township. You said we were currently saving about 1,000 acres a year. How much land are we losing to development every year?
I can't give you the exact number.
And it's greater than what we're saving.
Well, I think that,
It might be.
if I may, and this, the only reason I speak up is because this is an issue of a lot of misconception. The question is, how much ag land are we losing to development? Okay, not just how much land we're losing, how much ag land are we using to, do you have any ideas on that?
We have developed acres over each year, you know. I think the way we look at our program too, we don't want to look at our program, our farmland preservation program as a growth management tool. We want to
Yeah, that's-
target in areas where agriculture is being productive, and not really necessarily compete with areas that are zoned appropriately, have infrastructure in place. I don't think we want to compete for those areas. They're the areas we should develop, and they're going to be much higher priced than if we focus in areas where agriculture will be productive now, well, in the future.
I think that can't be repeated enough, even though we've repeated it here a number of times, is that people are getting land preservation confused with farmland preservation, very different animals. You can't use the terms for them interchangeably because they aren't run interchangeably. So we know we're losing some land to growth, but the purpose of the program is to preserve prime soil lands. And those areas that, as are identified, largely do not lie in the development zones that have infrastructure, et cetera. So, I mean, that goes to the heart of the issue of how fast do we need to make this happen? You know, does it have to be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? The question is urgency, and that's one of the major factors that is going to impact our decision making. Because if if there is an imminent threat in the manner you described it, then urgency becomes a bigger consideration of our calculus.
And of course, when there's an imminent threat, then the cost of the conservation easement goes up even higher. So the question is, as far as I'm concerned,
Easement's not a threat zone. That's the point.
do we try to preserve as much of these fertile soils as we can, as soon as we can, or do we wait until essentially the cost is out of reach?
Anybody else have any comments, questions? Stephanie? Kurt, thank you. Do we have any other business to discuss? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
We're adjourned. Thank you all.